Hey, it's Jim.
I'm Holly.
I'm Gen X.
And I'm Gen Z.
Welcome to our series.
I have compiled a list of questions that myself and other people in my generation feel that we weren't taught in school, which I feel like is most things.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's cool because I'm getting older now.
Get the F off my yard!
And I'm always like, all the young people these days,
They know nothing.
I mean, it seems like that, but they know a lot of things that I didn't know.
There's definitely information overload for
Right.
us to learn with everything readily available, and I feel like so many things just get brushed over. I texted the same question to about 30 people, and at least half of them replied, not even in question form, just the word taxes.
Oh,
no
yeah.
context.
It's good. Well, who does understand taxes, right?
Broke it down into two parts. What are taxes? And where does our tax money go?
So what are taxes, right? I mean, taxes could be anything. It could be what, sales tax or
I
tax
think
on
we're
gas.
talking about April 15th having to pay.
Filing your
Yes.
annual taxes with the
Yes.
IRS. So those taxes are income-based taxes. You make such and such amount of money, you pay this much tax. If you're like a W-2 employee, a lot of times they will withhold taxes. It's taxes that you would pay anyways, but a lot of people think that, oh, I'm getting a big return this year. It's just money you paid into it all year long already, and then you get some back. Taxes are just, what the government or the IRS thinks you owe based on what you make. So that's why you see people trying to do tax write-offs so they can pay less tax.
Where does our tax money go? What does it fund?
Well, our tax money goes to the government, basically,
I could
right?
use it more than the government could.
It's my money and I need it now!
I mean, taxes are supposed to go towards, for the public, roads, utilities, our safety, police officers, military, teachers, things like that.
And then last on taxes, how do you file your taxes? I feel like, you call an accountant.
I'm an accountant.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Here in the state of Nevada, we don't really have a state income tax. We only have to file like a federal tax. It's pretty simple. You could do it yourself, get a TurboTax or whatever people do, or you can go to an accountant, places like H&R Block or whatever they do. Yeah. Call somebody for help unless you think you can take it on.
I call someone.
So you're an independent contractor,
Yeah.
so you got like 1099 work, gig work, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's not like a straightforward one. If you worked for like a regular employer and you just had a W-2,
I would do TurboTax.
very easy to do. Plug everything in those boxes. Oh, geez, that's such a good question. I'll be honest with you. I don't really recall a time where inflation was this bad, honestly.
That doesn't make me feel good.
I don't recall remembering like, oh my God, everything just went up and cost that much this fast.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing a time like that. However, I do remember a couple recessions that we've seen. After Y2K, I mean, we had a small slowdown, obviously like 2008, 2009.
Remember that historic 5-day rally, the biggest since 1933? Well, it ran into a bear today, and in one big bite, more than half of those gains were gone.
It was like the Great Recession or
Third
whatever.
grade.
Third grade.
But I was in the third grade.
You're in third grade. How did you feel in third grade with the Great Recession?
But I remember being like 8 years old and just being terrified of the political commercials. How everyone dramatizes things, and
Yeah.
I just remember thinking I was gonna walk to school and get bald.
It was a crazy time because a lot of people got laid off. People were losing their homes, but I think I question the narrative of that a little bit. It's like so many people are like, oh, I got into these mortgages, they tricked me. I don't believe it. I think most people knew what they were doing. They just went in there thinking that prices would just keep going up forever. And then when they didn't, everyone just started letting go of their homes. Like they're just like, well, my neighbor's not paying, I'm not paying, right?
Yeah.
And you were able to basically live in your house for like 2 years before they even foreclosed on you.
They did that in 2020 for a little bit too, didn't they? Or is that just rentals?
They did like a forbearance thing where you could put a pause on your payments if you wanted to, which is not good for your credit, by the way. What you're thinking of is they made it like you weren't allowed to evict people during the recession.
Yeah.
Or not the recession, the pandemic. Yeah. It's not quite like 2008, because in 2008 prices started going down. There was a lot of inventory on the market, a lot of short sales, foreclosures on the market, whereas now there's very little inventory. So it's a little different there. But to be honest with you, interest rates were very similar back then too. They're around, I like what they are right now, actually, like 7%-ish.
Good to know that there's been similar times, but the fact that this is the worst inflation, I'm just gonna hope it's gonna
Well, I mean, the thing about it, when you look back, depending on what moves you made during those times, determines where you are right now.
That
a lot
makes
of times,
sense.
because there were people that were just letting go of homes. It left like a bad taste in their mouth. They're like, I'm never gonna buy a house again. You fast forward to today, and they're like, damn, I should have bought a house, right? Because the recession was bad, but people that bought homes like in 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever, it's like they're all sitting on a bunch of equity in their house. I mean, some people 4 times, 3, triple at least.
I mean, if we look at California over the next 30 years, I think we're going to be a second California.
Let's talk about that, because everyone always compares our market to California.
We are so close. I've been saying that they're going to realize we're 4 hours from LA. People in California and New York commute further than 4 hours to their job, like some people do. And I'm like, people are going to realize that Vegas is 4 hours away and it's so cheap to live.
Oh, well, a lot of people feel like Vegas is part of just SoCal, really, right?
Yeah.
And I always tell people, like, well, if you're going to start moving further and further out, no shade, but wouldn't you rather live in Las Vegas than Barstow or Victorville or Baker or something like that? If you're going to go far, might as well live in Vegas, right? And not pay state taxes.
Exactly.
Right?
I couldn't imagine living in like Barstow and paying California taxes.
For real, right?
Like, what is the benefit?
Well, like your question about what are taxes for, right?
Yeah.
It's for public services, right? Like, oh, it's not like people are like, oh, Victorville has the best education system or healthcare or anything like that, really, right?
It has the gas stations on the way to LA.
You can charge your Tesla at Barstow if you want. Oh gosh, I don't know. This is just my opinion. I think all the stimulus money definitely had some effect on
I would think so too.
the inflation, right? Because if you just give everybody a bunch of money, then there's just kind of more money floating around in the economy now, right? It's almost like, of course things are going to go up in price, right? Everyone has more money now, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like if everybody in the world got a 10% raise at their job. I think everything's probably going to go up 10% in costs.
Isn't that like every time they raise minimum wage, everything kind of goes,
Exactly.
it always costs the same.
Exactly, right? I mean, when I was young, minimum wage was like $5, right?
Yeah.
But then
that's not, when I started working here 7, so that's not that different.
Right, and then it's like, well, that minimum wage job could get you a value meal at a fast food restaurant. So now minimum wage is up to what, like
14,
right?
Something around there?
Yeah, that's kind of what a value meal costs now. Yeah. So same thing, right? I think the stimulus money definitely just injected a lot of money to our economy. So now everything's expensive.
Yeah.
So I think there is some of that to it.
So this is a question that my generation asks a lot.
Why can't we just print more money?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. You hear things of like the national debt. It's like basically we're lending out money of our future for today.
Huh?
This concept I don't think will ever make sense to me, the national debt thing. Why can't we just pretend it never happened?
Let's just pay it off, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't have that much money.
But like, why can't you just cancel it?
You can't just, because we owe people that. Kind of like using credit cards or credit. Let's say you go get a loan for like $50,000, right? And then you get the $50,000 and then you end up paying it back month by month, year after year till it's paid off, right? That's kind of like the national debt, right?
Okay.
Oh, let's print a bunch of money right now so we can give it out to everybody. But you need to pay that back at some point.
Yeah.
Because you can't just print money, because what if everyone just starts printing money, right?
So what is the national debt, what everyone in America owes collectively, or is it something that like America owes to someone?
I feel like it's what America owes.
So why are they judging me for owing $2,000 on a credit card when they owe everyone billions of dollars?
Why about yourself?
Well, the money they borrowed is the money you borrowed, I guess, if you want to think of it that way.
Then they shouldn't have given it to me if they didn't have it.
Yeah, they will have it, right?
True, when it gets paid back. See, I'm learning.
Exactly. Yeah, it's living for today type.
Yeah.
Bankruptcy is you owe more than you have. You're going out of business or you're just dead broke. You owe a bunch, you don't have much, everyone's collecting and they're like, it's time to pay, and you're like, I don't have anything, right?
Yeah.
So that's when you file bankruptcy, right?
Get out of jail free.
It's not a get out of jail free.
I was gonna say, so what's the downside? Because that's if they're gonna get rid of all my debt, my credit's just bad for a few years. Kind of sounds nice.
That's a good point. I mean, if you file bankruptcy and you're like, well, let me just charge up all these credit cards and then just file bankruptcy, right?
Yeah.
Well, to me, it's morally wrong.
True, I agree.
To me, it's morally wrong, right? Because
it.
you're borrowing it, telling them that, hey, I intend on paying you back.
Yeah.
And then if you intentionally are charging up debt just to file bankruptcy, I think back in the credit days I worked, they would call it bust out.
But
right?
so that's some form of fraud. It has to be.
It really is,
doing
because
it purposely.
it's kind of a criminal, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, I'm going to intentionally rack up this debt and then file bankruptcy on it, right? And it's kind of like a lot of stores these days. They said they're going to get rid of their self-checkout things, right? Because there's too much loss. People are stealing. The results are they have to raise the prices now to cover the losses that they're taking. So same thing. If you have a bunch of people maxing out credit cards and then filing bankruptcy, someone's going to have to absorb that debt somehow, and it's going to be the people that actually pay always. Yeah. That's a great question. For example, like phones, right? You want to buy a brand new phone these days, it's like $2,000 or $40 a month for 2.5 years. In these cases, if there's no interest involved, I would totally do the payments. And the reason for that is this whole time value of money, right? $40 now is not the same value as $40 in 2.5 years. Let's say we take it back to 2020. Everything was cheaper. Gas, cars,
oh my God,
houses, and everything in between, eggs, right? If I can stretch out the payments and do something like that and it doesn't cost me, I'm gonna do it. But I know that I have to build it into my budget right now. So that's one way of looking at it. Instead of taking $2,000 out of savings or checking and just putting it towards a phone, well, now you've turned it into just an extra $40 bill, which is more manageable to me, because now you have the other $1,900 to work with or do something with still, rather than, oh, just take the money now. I have this client, he's a very conservative person in investments. He doesn't like to owe money, so he'll buy his investment properties cash, and if he does get a mortgage, he wants to pay it off as soon as possible. The other side of the coin is someone that just puts the minimum down and then buys stuff minimum down. Like, rather than buying one house and paying cash, why not buy 3 or 4 houses and just put 25% down on each of them? So there's pros and cons of both, right? Pros of financing perhaps is I get to buy more houses. The con is if someone doesn't pay rent, I still owe the mortgage payment. Whereas for my buddy that buys them cash, if someone doesn't pay rent that month, he has no pressure at all. Is it the optimal thing to do with money and investments? Maybe not, but peace of mind and no mental stress is worth something too, right? On like fixed loans or any type of loans, usually is you pay interest on what your balance is. So if you make extra payments, those extra payments go towards your principal balance. So as your principal balance goes down, the amount of interest you pay also goes down. Say you owe $10,000 and you're like, hey, I had a good closing, right? Let me just put $3,000 to this. Now your balance went from 10K to 7K. So instead of paying interest on 10K, you're paying interest on 7K now. So in a way, you actually are paying less interest that way. I used to have like a mortgage little coupon book of payments back in the day. And there was a place where you can write in additional principal. So if you wanted to pay a little extra that month, it would go towards principal. Some places you might have to tell them
Just tell them.
Yeah, better
sense.
safe. Credit card companies, they're like sharks, right? If you pay a bunch of extra, they're like, oh, we're just going to save this for your interest payment every month. That would be so you want to make sure that that's not what they do. I think that's a serious problem. You know, a senior in high school can turn 18. You can't go to the bar, you can't gamble, you can't do all this, but they're gonna start mailing you these pre-approvals, right?
Get loans.
I agreed to give them $120,000 when I was 17 years old with no attorney present. That's illegal.
Yeah, $500 credit card, $1,000 credit card, pre-approved, right? You're like fresh meat. This is a whole group of people where I can give them a credit card. They don't teach this in school very much, right? Like they should say, hey, watch out, when you turn 18, you're gonna get a bunch of credit card offers. Here's what to watch out for, or here's what not to do, right? And what not to do is look at it as free money and spend it, and then you're like, oh shit, how do I pay it off? You gotta think about how you're gonna pay it off, right? But what happens usually is They'll send you one credit card, you max it out, and all of a sudden you get another offer. Let me get another credit card, and then you max that one out. And then pretty soon you get another offer. They're saying for balance transfers, right? Let's consolidate your credit card debt into one payment for you. Before you know it, you have a mountain of debt that you don't know how the hell you're gonna repay. And that's the biggest trap. And the worst thing about it is you do that when you're 18 and you try to buy a car, say you're at 20 or something. Now you got messed up credit and you've got a bunch of debt. Now you're paying high interest rates on a car loan now. It's a big trap, and then you end up finding some job and you're just working to repay some debt. Like the people that have the most money and probably don't need to borrow money get the best offers actually, right? You get the best promotions, you pay the lowest interest, and it's easy to get loans too. You don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops.
How is that fair?
The young person that is not making a lot of money right away, right? I mean, when you're like early 20s, I mean, your jobs don't pay that much. And you overextend yourself or you charge too much, and now your monthly payment's really high, and you work a hourly job or a salary job or something, you're only going to get this much. It's really hard to put a dent on like a big debt, right? Like if you have an extra $300, $400 a month, you have a $5,000 debt. It seems like it's like hopeless. Living on credit is a really dangerous thing. You're basically living beyond your means, spending more money that than you're actually bringing in. How do you ever get ahead if you're just always adding to debt every month?
I didn't learn to live within my means until I'd messed up royally, like a handful of times, and paid a lot of money to credit card companies.
What happened?
But like the first credit card I ever maxed out, it was I had a $300 balance, and I was like, oh, it's fine, you know, 300. All of a sudden, they upped me to 2,800.
How?
I don't know. It was Capital One. I was 18.
Like it was like 20-something% interest, right? Plus
no,
late
like
fees.
27.
Child. Anyway, so.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and I didn't know what that meant.
Well, here's the worst thing about it. Let's just say you had a $500 credit card, and then you made the minimum payment, which was barely enough to just cover the interest on it, right? And then all of a sudden, I don't know, you miss a payment here, whatever. They start rolling in penalty fees. You know, your interest.
Damn penalty fees.
Your interest starts rolling, and then all of a sudden, like you owe like $2,000 now, which was originally $500. So what they do with that is they'll take that debt and they'll sell it to like a debt collector, right? They're like, Holly owes us $2,000, but we'll sell it to you for $600 because they only really just lent you $500, right? So they make that back. The debt collector now says, well, you owe me a $2,000 debt, but I'll settle with you for $800. So they make a little money. The credit card company made more money from what they actually lent you, and you're the one basically getting screwed on all of this, right? It's kind of predatory almost, especially when you're like 18 and you don't know what the hell's going on, and then they're just throwing this money at you, but you're considered an adult. You're responsible for the debt.
There's this joke. At 17, I had to ask permission to go to the bathroom, and now at 18, I can get drafted for war and take out a loan on a house.
You can't drink.
Yeah, don't even get me started.
You can't even smoke now, right?
Yeah, no, you can't. And
I didn't even realize the age of smoking went up to 21, actually.
Okay, I did. It didn't affect me. I turned 21 before it happened. But I saw a lot of friends who are addicted to cigarettes and nicotine get really upset about having to.
What if you were smoking for 2 years?
There should have been like a lenience for those people, the people in the middle, like
grandfathered.
Grandfathered in. That's the word. You can't just get people addicted to things and then raise the age.
But you can have a credit card. You can get a credit card.
Get a loan for a house.
People don't learn finances. Budgeting is so important.
Budgeting was never taught. Credit cards was never taught. Loans.
Credit scores.
No one in my generation even knows how to buy a house.
It puts you at a big disadvantage if you have racked up a bunch of credit card debt and you're paying a higher interest car note too. It's hard enough to keep up with that, let alone try to save up money for a down payment to buy a house, right?
Totally.
So it's kind of like, avoid that first mistake, save as much money as you can, maybe even live at home, drive a more modest car, buy a flex car, too young, right? Get a house, that's a flex, right? I mean, it's okay to live modestly. I mean, I think in your generation, everybody wants things fast. I want to be on a boat, I want to be on a yacht, I want to go on a jet.
What all the influencers are doing.
Look at all my watches and my jewels, and then it's not real though.
With the internet, I grew up on instant gratification. Anything I wanted, I can search for it. When I wanted to talk to, if they're across the world, world. Half my family's in England. I can talk to them anytime. It's just caused our whole generation, we don't know how to be patient. I don't think that's our fault. And it makes it hard when we're thinking about long-term investments and saving money over a long term, because we don't think long-term. Like most of my generation, they say, here for a good time, not a long time. We want to worry about today and what's going to get me through today.
With investments, and especially in real estate, it's all about patience. Real estate is not a quick turnaround game. People that own hundreds of properties, they didn't buy it in 1 day or 2 days. I mean, it was years probably.
Yeah.
People that, I bought this house for $100,000, now it's worth $1 million. It's probably been 20 years in the making, right? Everything takes time, really, especially in real estate. Like one of the quickest ways to make money in real estate is like flipping houses. It's probably going to still be a few months for you. And it's not a fast process. It takes patience because the time is what really compounds the value for you. I think Warren Buffett calls it like the eighth wonder in the world or whatever right?
It's
But
crazy.
compounding interest is, I'll use this example, we'll just use round numbers, but let's say you have a $100 investment and you make a 10% interest. Well, after the first year or period, now that 100 became 110. Now the next year you're making 10% of the 110, which is now $11. Now you have $121 now. So that's compounding right there. But when you compound interest, you think about how much money you're putting in, how much interest you're getting or return on your investment or ROI. And then you look at how much time you have in the investment. Let's just say you started saving money and every month you put an extra $100 in. What's going to grow fast? Compounding your interest. And if you did that for say 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, I mean, the longer you go, the more it makes. The more you put in, the longer it's in there, the better return you make. When I first had my first kind of grown-up job, it was for a bank. And they offered like a 401k. Well, I contributed to it because it was like, oh, they matched me or whatever, up to 3%. I mean, I worked at that place for, a few years. And in a few years, just like, oh, I had like 30K suddenly. I was like, holy cow, compounded for me, right? Whereas my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, she never did the 401k thing. So what happens is she didn't have a 30K at the end of the day. The lifestyle difference was very minimal, right? Like I never saw the money, so I didn't feel like I wasn't getting it.
It's only a little bit out of each.
It was just slowly being saved for me. I guess the compound interest thing is you're just reinvesting your savings, and the longer you do it, the bigger it gets. Let's say you get $2,000 and you blow that $2,000. Well, next month you're getting another 2Gs, right? And then you blow all that. And the next month you're going to get another 2Gs, right? Something you have to consider is $2,000 right now seems like a decent amount, but $2,000 in 10 years from now is going to be like $1,000 what you can buy now. You won't be able to buy the iPhone 30 for $2,000. It's going to be like $4,000 now, right? And think about this too. If you had $1 million right now, and you put it in the bank, you will actually make like $4,000 back on interest for it for every month. That's kind of having your money work for you in a way. You're having that $1 million, now you get $4,000 every month while keeping the $1 million. I mean, it's about discipline. Because it's dangerous, right? Like what if you just go buy a bunch of cars and travel and stuff and you're not reinvesting the money? Once that million's out, you're SOL, right?
Well, before we ramble on for another hour and a half, I hope you guys learned something from this video. I know I definitely did.
Thanks for checking out the video, and please check out some of our other videos.
Yeah, and comment down below if you have any questions or just things that you weren't taught in school, or if you agree with some of these things that you had no idea you had to learn when you were 18. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, and we'll see you in the next one.